Possible Mercy buff. Brigitte is the biggest balance problem in the game. Ooh, this is going to be a spicy video. Hey guys, so Geoff Goodman has spoken out on the forums. Now, Geoff Goodman is the principal hero designer. He is the man in charge of new hero abilities. He's also the man in charge of Overwatch balance. So what he says can have a massive impact on the game because, of course, he's guiding the direction of the game. So what we're going to do here is take a look at this forum assault he went on, where he replied to a lot of posts and a lot of questions. Now, there was a thread on the Blizzard forums thanking Geoff for all of his hard work. Now, he has got a very difficult job. He has to balance Overwatch. He has to try and keep all of the heroes viable. He has to try and keep all of the player base happy. It's a super difficult job. So whenever he speaks out, we get insight into what he's thinking, which is obviously valuable, like super valuable insight. So let's get stuck into this. The very first question he was asked is, what is the biggest balance problem in the game? And this is what Geoff said. I'd say at this point, it's pretty clear Brigitte's initial balance was pretty far off the mark. She has been nerfed multiple times since then, and she is still very strong. Another regret is, although I really like the way Hanzo has turned out, I somewhat regret increasing his projectile speed specifically. It will always feel great when testing a change like that, and it has helped make him a lot more consistent, but he has lost some of what helped make him feel very different than other heroes. That's not to say you're going to see Hanzo nerf next patch or something, but it's just one of those retrospective things that I wonder if there was another way of getting to the same goal. Alright, so that's cool. Now, of course, the big thing to take away from that is Brigitte. Clearly, they have a problem with Brigitte, and it's clearly evident. She has been nerfed over and over and over again since she was launched into the game. Now, we know Brigitte was put into the game to counter dive comp, and she did that in a big way. But of course, she gave rise to other issues, and the Overwatch development team have all kind of said they don't really like the way Brigitte was implemented. So they're still trying to balance her, and we'll have to wait and see to see if they get it right in the long term. But probably, yeah, she's a hero that's probably going to see more nerfs in the future, which whether that's a positive or negative thing, I don't really know. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you're a Brigitte main, it's probably quite annoying to see your hero constantly nerfed over and over again. The thing on Hanzo is pretty funky. An interesting kind of insight there into his mind, I suppose. So here's the thing. What about Mercy buffs, right? So he was asked, would you guys ever consider buffing her heal per second up to 55 to see if it works as a nice middle ground? It could be the extra oomph some Mercy players miss about her healing. Or also, would you ever consider giving her an ability on her reload button for her staff, which temporarily boosts her healing output? Now, if you guys have watched the Mercy coverage we've done in the past, we actually said things like this. Yeah, give her like a burst heal using a reload, which maybe overcharges her staff. Increasing her heal per second, maybe that's something to do. But the issue I've got with Mercy, and in fact, if you guys watched the interview I did with Geoff said he's happy with the balance of Mercy. And I actually said back to him, well, yeah, I think I'm kind of happy as well. I am kind of happy, but I still think she misses that emergency healer impact. She misses that impactful moment all the other supports have got. And I just wish she had that. So this is what Geoff says in response to that question. Overall, her healing output is still higher than the other healers, which she pays for by not being able to split focus and do other things while healing. I'd also love to be able to increase the power of her damage boosting, but it causes a lot of issues with various breakpoints where suddenly X hero can one-shot 200 health heroes. There are other ways to make it feel better without just adding raw damage though. We'll see. So this is him, I think, confirming that yes, they are still looking at Mercy. He's still thinking about ways to make her more impactful, which I think is a good thing. I don't think anybody would argue against that. My issue, as I said, has always been Mercy doesn't feel that, like, she doesn't have that oomph moment. She doesn't have that Anna grenade moment, that Lucio amp it up moment. She kind of just doesn't have that, and I wish she did. So maybe we'll see changes coming to Mercy. I think this is probably an indication that, yes, possible buffs may be coming down the line for Mercy, which is probably a good thing. So what about more buffs and more nerfs? We know right now on the PTR, there are a lot of changes. Also, the PTR is actually being used as it was intended to be used right now. So Junkrat got buffed on PTR, then they nerfed him because they realized, hang on, he's doing so much damage, he's getting his ultimate so quick, we need to nerf his ultimate charge rate, but probably lower his damage a little bit on PTR. And this is what Geoff says about that. We're mostly going to see how this next patch shakes out, since it has a ton of changes in it already. That said, we would have liked to keep the Junkrat buff at 140 from a pure DPS standpoint, especially against tanks and barriers. But it was just really pushing it once he could one-shot 200 health heroes with a 50% damage boost. Now remember what he just said about Mercy, about these breakpoints, about if you buff damage boost and suddenly DPS heroes can one-shot 200 HP heroes, that is a breaking point in the game, so they want to avoid that. He also said they experimented with making grenades no longer explode on enemy impact once they hit a surface, as a way to nerf his spam without affecting direct hits. But it felt really weird and kind of broken in a lot of cases. I think, personally, I don't think that would have been too much of a good change. It would have been really weird to play Junkrat if that's how his grenades actually worked. And then he said finally, so possibly Junkrat buffs and some different Reaper buffs, since the pure passive healing buff was really problematic at the lower ranks. Now, I actually like the Reaper nerf on the PTR because Reaper is really dominant at lower ranks and it's silly. Like, he's literally unkillable. So I'm glad that they've gone in and changed that by reducing it by 10%. Maybe they do other things to that. We'll have to wait and see. But that's funky, isn't it? That you can see the effort that goes into these changes. He actually, there's a lot. It's not just like buff this hero because it'll be better against tank comps and stuff like that. There is always a reason to do it. So it's it's super cool to me to get these insights into key developer minds. So what about unused hero abilities? This is a really good question because when they give us answers to questions like this, we get to see in their, inside their design philosophy, what things were they actually testing out. Maybe we'll see these things in the future. So when he was asked about unused hero abilities and mechanics that he'd like to say in the game, this is what Geoff said. We have a ton of unused abilities and weapon prototypes sitting around. They're generally either something we've tried on a hero in the past and didn't like, or something we did like but didn't feel it fit on the hero we were testing. So some examples of these off the top of my head. Now this is really cool. Bomblet gun. We had this gun where the projectiles would stick into enemies, but the impact damage was pretty low. The alternate fire had a fairly long animation time, but would remotely detonate all the little bombs you stuck onto your targets. It was pretty fun, but we had just need the right hero for it to work with. It was really fun playing around with on Tracer. I can imagine it was. That's actually, I think that would be a nice little weapon, like a remote detonated weapon. That'd be pretty funky actually, because there'd be a lot of ways to play around that potentially. Things like Zarya bubbles, walking up to a Reinhardt barrier so it only blows you up and not your rest of your team. I don't know. That'd be really cool. This though is really funky. This is Invis Wall. This was originally on Sombra, I think. The idea is you plant this wall that made it so enemies couldn't see you through it, but you and your allies could see just fine. It didn't block bullets like a barrier. It was just for hiding while running past a choke or just throwing into the middle of a fight. It was pretty scary to fight against when all these projectiles were magically coming out of the thing, but you couldn't see who or where they were being fired from. It was like a high-tech smoke bomb. That is funky as hell, right? Maybe that is kind of what turned into Baptiste's ultimate in a way. Maybe it was the same type of thing, like it deployed like I like to call it a goalpost because it looks like a soccer goal. Like the goalpost thing gets deployed, maybe that's the earlier version of that, I don't know. But imagine the impact of that in a game. You could get through so many chokes with that because, well, I guess could you, right? You'd see the thing go down, there'd be a visual effect of, okay, the invis wall is up, and then everybody would just spam the invisible, wouldn't they? Guess maybe you could use a Reinhardt barrier or something. I don't know. That is really funky though. I really like that. He also said as well, he thought it would be really, really cool to do some sort of tunneling effect where you could maybe temporarily destroy or remove a small part of a level. Now, that would be ridiculous, but he does say it'll probably never happen due to the immense technical issues, because imagine trying to, like, a game engine that is built not to have like adaptive geometry in the map that players can manipulate to suddenly just go, yeah, we want this in the game. I don't think that's even possible, but that would be really cool. Like, imagine that you just suddenly like rip a hole, like you could make your own. Yeah, that just is that would be really great. But I think a lot of the map design would be totally redundant because Overwatch is built around choke points, isn't it? And well, I mean, if you're just going, you just make your own backdoor entrance. That would be ridiculous. Holy hell. Okay, so what about Symmetra? What about a teleporter build speed? Because it's a bit annoying, right? You can't use it to get out of a fight most of the time because, well, it's too slow at casting, and then you die. Well, this is what Geoff says about this. As far as the teleport build speed, maybe, so this is maybe in the sense of maybe we'll look at it. He says, I totally get the thing where you try to make the clutch save and then build, and then the build time is so long that they die anyway. But the concern is we need to make sure we don't just give your whole team a nearly instant teleportation across a huge area. If we're not careful, it could really make all chokes not even worth trying to defend. That said, it is something we could try and play test with to see how it goes. So that's funky, right? That means that, yeah, okay, they're probably going to look at Symmetra in some sort of way. I think Symmetra still is in a funky position. She's got good buffs on the PTR, though, so I think we are probably sleeping on her a little bit. I think she will be decent DPS, especially as a weapon. Ramps up much quicker now from the primary fire, which is good stuff. What about this? So Ryan on the forum said, Echo has wings. And Geoff responded to it and said, you're right. No, I was like, okay, but does this even mean anything? Surely not. Surely not. But think about the changes on the PTR right now. Think about the nerf to Mercy that's on the PTR, and it's not just to Mercy, but it's to any flying hero. They can be knocked back and interrupted, which I guess is Mercy with Valkyrie, right? But here's the thing: if Echo's got wings, and Geoff is maybe confirming it here, maybe Echo can do something while it's flying, right? A channeled ability that needs to be interrupted. So that's why knockback effects now interrupt Mercy's res in Valkyrie to keep it consistent. Remember, these guys are working in the future. We don't know what's coming out. They do. So they build things into the game to get ready for it. And there's evidence of them there's actual just straight up evidence of them doing this in the past to lead up to other updates. Now, I think this is funky, right? Because of course, Lucio Boop, Winston, Primal Rage, they can knock Mercy around now and it interrupts her res. Whether that should be a thing, I don't know. Like, when Mercy's using Valkyrie, I probably think she shouldn't really get knocked back from a res because that is kind of a bit of a slap in the face. But hey, we'll have to wait and see what happens. And finally, Geoff says thank you for the appreciation thread. Overwatch is certainly a challenging game to both tune and continually add new and interesting content. When I think back to how the game was in beta or even launch, I feel like we've come a long way since then. Remember, there was a time when McCree's Fan the Hammer did full damage per bullet. Zenyatta had 150 health. Farah's concussive blast did 700 damage to shields and barriers. I remember that as well. Poor Zen. Reinhardt's charge had no wind-up. It would just come out instantly and kill anyone in front of him. That said, we're committed to continue to update and tune the game. Although there will be always some changes that will not be popular with some players, know that the goal is to always keep every hero unique and powerful for everyone. While I'm here, I might as well clear up a couple of minor misconceptions I see occasionally about my history at Blizzard. Previous to the Overwatch team, I worked on World of Warcraft as an encounter designer. I made a ton of different content, from dungeons like Shadowfang Keep, Deadmines, Nomagan, to raid encounters like Onyxia, Blackwing Lair, Lich King, etc, etc. From there, I moved directly onto Titan, which eventually became Overwatch. While I have a great respect for the designers over on the Heroes of the Storm team, I never worked on that project other than occasionally sending feedback or talking to various designers over lunch. Well, there we go, guys. I think that actually is a really cool insight into what Geoff Goodman's thinking. I think the big takeaways from this are there could be possibly a Mercy buff in the future. I would like to see that, I think. If it's a buff which gives her or makes her more impactful to play, like a buff to make her feel better, I guess. Brigitte was the biggest balance issue and still is the biggest balance issue for the game, and a ton of other cool stuff like unused abilities. Really cool. I really like this. Developers, post more on the forums. It's really, really cool. Okay, guys, I've been Stylosa. This has been Unit Lost. If you guys enjoyed the video, then you can like the video. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter, which is @Stylosa, and also I'm on Instagram, which is @Stylosa, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Toodaloo.